Welcome back to Hedgehog Radiology, where radiology doesn't have to be intimidating.
Hey everyone, it is great to be back here with you.
So today we're doing a deep dive into the hidden world of radiology careers, and we're breaking down the basics of how imaging technology actually sees inside your body.
Right, so let's unpack this because radiologists are basically the doctor's doctor sitting in dark reading rooms, solving puzzles for every other specialty in the hospital.
Yeah, and their training is brutal, right? Like 13 or 14 years in the U.S., whereas in the U.K., they integrated much earlier, right out of high school.
Exactly, completely different philosophies on building that visual pattern recognition.
But the thing I really want to expand on here is the compensation difference, because I was looking at the notes for this deep dive, and the U.S. numbers are just staggering.
Yeah, they really are.
I mean, we're talking a median salary of like $530,000 to $590,000 a year.
Right.
And subspecialists or private practice partners, they are pulling in 700,000 or 800,000, and the top earners are crossing $1 million.
It's a completely different stratosphere compared to the UK, where a consultant makes roughly 100 to 150,000 pounds.
Oh, wow. That is a massive gap.
Well, you do have to factor in, the NHS benefits and the fact that U.S. doctors graduate with massive six-figure debt.
Right, sure.
But even with that debt, the earning ceiling in the U.S. is just huge.
And it's not even just the money, right?
Yeah.
I was reading these medical forums, and they constantly talk about the lifestyle.
Oh, the teleradiology setup.
Yeah. Working like 7 days on,
Yeah.
7 days off, reading scans from a home office.
Right.
There's that joke in medicine that you get to pick 2 out of 3 location, money or lifestyle. Radiology seems like this rare unicorn where you can actually have all 3.
Which is exactly why those residency spots are so incredibly competitive. But none of that elite skill matters if the image they're looking at is bad, which brings us to the rad techs who actually take the images.
Right, the techs are the first quality check, making sure the patient is positioned perfectly,
Yeah.
and they're earning like $78,000 to $87,000 with just a 2-year degree.
It is an amazing return on investment, for sure.
But here's where it gets really interesting to me. The interventional radiology techs.
Oh, yeah. IR is a whole different beast.
Because, I mean, I always pictured a rad tech standing safely behind like a lead-lined window, right? Just telling you to hold your breath over a little intercom.
Yeah, standard X-ray style.
Right. But the notes show IR techs working in these suites that look exactly like surgical operating rooms. Like, what are they actually doing in there?
They are completely scrubbed in.
Oh,
yeah. Sterile gowns, standing shoulder to shoulder with the physician. They do minimally invasive procedures where instead of cutting a patient open, they make a tiny pinhole and thread a catheter through the blood vessels.
oh, wow.
And they use live, continuous X-rays fluoroscopy to guide that catheter to stop a bleed or, place a stent. So the tech is right there in the sterile field managing the equipment.
That is wild. They are basically operating in a high-stakes trauma environment, doing surgery via a video game screen.
Pretty much, yeah.
And I guess the compensation reflects that, right?
Right.
Earning up to $127,000, and travel IR techs can pull in over $2,500 a week.
Easily. And they're supported by radiology nurses who handle the IV contrast and are trained to manage, sudden anaphylactic shock if a patient reacts badly while wedged inside an MRI.
Right, a terrifying scenario. So they definitely earn their $80,000 to $110,000. Oh, and we can't forget the medical physicists and the PACS administrators who manage the digital image servers.
Oh, the PACS admins.
Yeah, the unsung heroes until the server crashes at 2 in the morning and the entire hospital just flies blind.
Exactly. The whole system grinds to a halt. But to understand the tech they're maintaining, we have to talk about how this all started almost by accident back in 1895.
Right. Wilhelm Conrad Röntgen in Germany.
Yeah, he was in Würzburg experimenting with cathode ray tubes, basically vacuum tubes shooting electrons.
And he covered the tube in this thick black cardboard, right?
Completely covered it. He wanted to block all visible light, but when he turned it on, he noticed this fluorescent screen sitting way across the dark room. Just
started glowing.
exactly. Something invisible was piercing straight through the cardboard.
So he calls it an X-ray, X for unknown, and he just gets obsessed.
Sleeps in his lab for weeks.
Yeah, testing different objects. And then he asked his wife, Anna Bertha, to put her hand on a photographic plate, and he hits it with the beam.
The defining moment.
Right, because when he develops the plate, he doesn't see her skin. He sees her bones preserved in shadow and the silhouette of her wedding ring.
Yeah.
And she looks at this. The first time anyone has seen inside a living body without a scalpel. And she screams, "I have seen my death."
It gives you chills. It was a massive paradigm shift, and he won the 1901 Nobel Prize for it.
But the immediate aftermath was completely the Wild West, right?
Mm.
People taking daily x-rays of their own hands and getting horrific burns and fatal cancers because they didn't understand radiation safety.
Exactly, which is why modern attenuation physics is so carefully calculated today to use minimal radiation.
Like shining a flashlight through your hand, right? The dense bone blocks the X-ray photons and shows up bright white on the detector, while the air in the lungs lets them pass and looks black.
Spot on, but standard X-rays squash everything flat, which is why CT scans were invented in the 1970s.
Right. CT solves the overlap problem by spinning the X-ray around you in a circle, letting the computer slice the image like a loaf of bread, which was famously funded in part by EMI's profits from selling Beatles records.
That is my favorite piece of medical trivia. But CT still uses radiation, whereas MRI, which came around the same time, uses zero radiation.
Because it uses a massive magnetic field to align the hydrogen atoms in your body, like forcing everyone in a stadium to stand up at once.
And then a radio pulse knocks them down, and the machine listens to the faint radio signal they emit as they stand back up, giving us incredible soft tissue contrast, though it's slow and terrible for anyone with metal implants.
Which is why we also have ultrasound, which uses high-frequency sound waves for real-time echolocation, completely radiation-free, though it highly depends on the skill of the tech holding the probe.
Right. But all of those X-ray, CT, MRI, ultrasound, they only show us anatomy, meaning what things look like, which is where PET scans come in.
Because PT scans show function. You inject a radioactive sugar tracer, like FDG, and aggressively growing cancer cells gorge on it and literally glow on the monitor.
Exactly. It maps the active metabolism right over the anatomy, removing so much of the guesswork.
So what does this all mean for you? From Röntgen's dark room to modern PT-CT suites, this entire invisible army of specialized professionals exists to get a safe, accurate image that solves your medical mystery.
And it leaves you with this to ponder. If we've evolved from crude 2D shadows of bones to seeing the real-time metabolic consumption of glucose in a single tumor, what happens to the nature of medicine when we can eventually visualize real-time cellular functions without ever making an incision?
Wow, yeah, a future where the scalpel is just replaced by the scan. Well, we hope this deep dive gave you a new appreciation for this hidden world. Thanks for joining us, and we'll catch you on the next deep dive where we'll actually teach you the basics of reading an X-ray for yourself.